All right, two things on my mind today, and I've just got to see if I can remember. One is, what would I have done with Assassin's Creed Japanese setting? Like just some ideas I was thinking about. If I were to develop the pitch for this, what would what would I have been doing in that idea development room? Is that the cat? No, that's a different cat. It looks, what the? Oh, look at these two. Oh my gosh. They're all little siblings. Well, that explains that one that's around. So somebody just has one of these. Okay. This is, okay. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the deal is. Like that somehow a litter of cats was just, sold to, people who live right around here. Anyway, so what would I have done? And I thought about it because of, one, it was Hanzo the Razor. So people who know that show from Japan, it's pretty lurid. It's like a live action kind of almost manga-ish type of story. Like it's really one of these things that you're sort of like, wait, the Japanese allow things like this on their television, so Hanzo the Razor, its setting, its time and place was very, very well done, because it was, I think, the burgeoning part of the Meiji Restoration, or that's yet to come. But foreign technologies are entering the country, and various Japanese lords and such are conspiring against the government in Edo, I believe it was. And so it's just a great setting, a great period of time to set like any kind of game setting in Japan. And so I was thinking about the various series that I was like, when that was about this period of time, this was about this period of time, like Lone Wolf and Cub. One of the interesting things with Lone Wolf and Cub is apparently it really was properly set linguistically. That apparently the Lone Wolf and Cub TV series, the original, the way that people were speaking, it was the way that people spoke at that time in Japan. So that, because somebody who had been to Japan, she had been in immersion school, she's like, yeah, this is really an old-fashioned type of Japanese. I don't quite understand all of it. And it was interesting to hear that. That's good setting work. And it really showed in how popular that series was. And then why, I never understand remakes. I don't get remakes. Just put this actor who it doesn't fit, do all these things that kind of don't work. I don't get remakes. I never have, but I'm also really snobby about cinema. It took me a long time with YouTubers or who made me understand, like, no, you like standalone movies titled in a way that they are standalone, that, it's like 2001 Space Odyssey. So it's not that there's then a 2000 such and such. I mean, maybe you could do that, but really, you want a completely original title. And that if people see it, they're like, oh, this is the next in the series, or this is based in the same setting and universe or something like that. I'm kind of like that. Anyway, so I've grown, though, to accept things are going to be named 1 and 2 and 3. that's why I've liked how video games at a certain point would they would do that. They would have a totally different title. But if you knew what you were seeing and you were a fan of this other game, you were like, "Oh, yes, this is a continuation in a series." But they've just named it, it's totally standalone. They've given it its own name. It's not like a 2 or a 3 or a 4. It doesn't have a sequence number. There we go. So more and more I've thought about this. And I'm like, okay, so if I were to have some setting in Japan, what would be the big setting? What would be, well, of course you'd be using ninja, but this whole idea of like, wait a second, okay, what you have is the Meiji Restoration. In some way, shape, or form, the foreigners are involved. There's intrigue everywhere. And there's, at some point, the story ends up leading to, Formosa, the Taiwan, right? And the big showdown between all these various, really cool characters. You got the Portuguese characters, you got the American Marine characters, you got the British sailor characters, you got all these characters that would be in that setting at that time. And then, remember, this is still prior to the British and the Americans demolishing slavery. So there's all kinds of various types of people running around who would have been like ship hands and such like, or could have been, especially with like privateer. You have some weird privateers, that for some reason have this widely diverse cast of characters on their raiding vessel, so I was like, this is something that could be done. You would have very, very simple firearms, lots of swords and weapons. You have the kind of black ships of the United States and that could be its own kind of character of sorts. So you have to fight like a boss, a giant black ship that's firing cannons at you, who knows. But the big idea, of course, is that the main character is Japanese. And the thing that really is kind of shocking is how there's so much from like 60s and 70s samurai movies that these various actors and such, that, you could even have lifted the likeness of, like, the guy who played Zatoichi, who is the original Lone Wolf and Cub, Ogami Ito. That dude, like, there's lots of footage of him that he could be kind of lifted and animated as a character in a game. So I just was thinking about it. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that got lost, because that's like this big wink and a nod to a lot of fans of that entire type of genre. The way that they could have played the whole idea of all these various types of ninja running around, and then all these various like armies of the West and other countries. Like, remember, there would be like Russians running around, various types of like sort of Mongol and Siberian types running around at that time. And those were still strong, or not strong nations, but nations with burgeoning modern, or burgeoning technology and stuff. They weren't. There was a lot that could be posited. That's the whole idea. It was enough of a wild time that you could write something in there like that, where the time that they chose and the wildness that they decided to throw in there, little spicy spice on there, the BBC, it just was too much. It just doesn't work. And then this guy, then the whole concept of he's in full rider armor it like a knight on a horse armor, like, and just striding around. Like, that's totally abnormal. And it's just really weird. Like, I mean, like, everything about it was a really, really weird choice of things to do. And it's just, it's very strange choices. And kind of made me think again how I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting this idea. Not so much these people were like say with Marvel and Star Wars, that they went out of their way to deprive the artists and writers of material from the comics. They said, no, don't read the comics. Don't become familiar with the characters from the background, from the actual material that the fans know. And this was admitted, this is admitted by a lot of the people who worked on those movies, because they wanted it to be totally original. And it's like, it actually is a weird way that, like, how everything is now in kind of reversal, satanic reversal kind of things. Like, it's actually the reversal of how you would do that. It's a complete reversal of that. Like, yes, we're going to make a movie about Napoleon. Don't look him up. We're going to make a story about Martin Luther King Jr., but don't look him up. It's going to be totally original. People will love it. We're geniuses. Oh my God, I'm Trismegistus himself. I've got a fucking keyboard, So that setting, there's the whole thing I figure out, I'm kind of anime dude, anime bro. So of course, there's an old man like Nicotine Tobacco, and he's an old man who has a box that's mysterious, and he rides an ox. At some point, there's you have to like let the ox go or something. And of course, anybody who knows the reference knows the reference. And that's the whole point. So they free the ox, and from there, a Nicotine Tobacco type character in his mysterious box, and this zany group that have slowly assembled, like various soldiers or whatever of different nations and privateers, and then these ninja, and maybe two different ninja clan that are typically at animosity and odds with one another. Ninja stare, ninja glare. Here's an example again. The ditch work. I totally missed this. I can't believe it. Yes, this is all, everything I've been showing you guys, this is what it results in. Now, this is probably one that they had a real deep ditch, so they put in trees. But this is what I mean. Like, and then you could see there's a spill pipe. And so you have this whole way that you have like plant life that can soak in, and that it's actually like cool. Like, it leaves an entire area of coolness. And it's very well done. It's very, very well done design. And yeah, I just really like it a lot. It's just good engineering, good civil engineering. So anyway, the other thing I was thinking about is, that's where I was first starting with this idea of like, what would I have done? Like, if I think I'm so damn great, what kind of thing would I have created, or what would I have posited at the big powwow where people get together and put the creative minds together? And now once you get to Taiwan, you have so much that could be done. Or the islands off of southwest, that southwest chain off of the main archipelago of Okinawa. Like that little chain of small islands, like that there's some way that this box is supposed to go there or go to a temple there. And then, you even have the setting of all the Okinawan, that big, that they think it's a, underwater giant temple rocks. I know. There's so much that could have been done, setting-wise, that you could have put all these people together. Now, remember, key to this that I'm actually also particularly upset with is BBC in Dai Nippon, but you can't consider, say, a diverse cast as Chinese characters of the day, characters that would have been from the Korean Peninsula, Okinawa, these completely established, totally different groups of people that had totally different, things going on, and the Russians that were, in the eastern portion there, during, I forget which czar it was. It was one of the more, I want to say it was Catherine, who actually established the stuff out east, but I might not be correct about that. And so I started thinking about it, I'm like, you guys had, but see, Russians aren't, the Russians being in the story wouldn't be diverse. The people of various Siberian and Mongol backgrounds, like the Manchukuo, as we would call it, that kingdom that was up there. I forget what it's actually called. But there's a name for it. We ended up calling it Manchukuo, and so all of this was available. And it's not that they botched it. I don't want to go there. It was just there. It was just so there. And you have then all of these ways that you could have done homage to older stuff, like Once Upon a Time in China, that there's ways you could have done like an homage to like a character that they fight like Jet Li, or they fight like Donnie Yen. Like a team of 3, Chinese travelers that are looking for the man on the box with the ox or whatever. Or, or at some point you deliver the box and the man, and the old man in the box, you deliver that to, these travelers, and that these travelers, like one fights like Donnie Yen, one fights like, as he's like, of course, like Ip Man. The other fights like Jet Li, when Jet Li was, not Feng Sayuk, but, I can't believe I'm forgetting it, but the Once Upon a Time in China character. And then, like, a third character, of course, it would probably have to be, like, a character that was fundamentally Michelle Yeoh. So that, you have fundamentally, like, you got Formosa, pardon me for this moment, you got Formosa at that time, you've got the setting in Japan of them modernizing, you had the Russians that had their intrigues going on. This was a fantastic period of time that you had as a setting for this video game. With that, and so I don't get why. It's so odd. So anyway, the other thing I was thinking about was something like, I kind of have been thinking, like, nobody's really seems to, I've heard a few people say it on their channels, but now it's like, I'm like, okay, we've really reached the cyberpunk period of time, like in combat and warfare. It's like the opening up of it. People were telling me about recent, Elon Musk's deal with the brain and nervous system stuff. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name. Neuralink. So the stuff with Neuralink that was a recent success, where a man was able to move a cursor around and manipulate a graphic user interface with his mind. He was, I believe, a quadriplegic. So that, and then what's going on with organoids, so sort of the first version of the cyber brain in a sense. What I'm starting to find interesting is then the story of Nasrallah. And I was kind of wondering how weird this was going to get. So right now, there's a lot of how did they get Nasrallah, but the big thing with it is there's the one story that's being, that's being thrown out there for the rumor mill and propaganda, is that a unknown substance was on a person's hand and shook hands with him at a personal meeting, and this substance was able to be traced. Now it's not that that's out there in any, it's just that this posits a pretty wide, this is a whole new deal now. If there was an invisible substance transferred by touch, that you could then trace Nasrallah to his underground mega compound. And it really was actually, I saw the schematics of it. So you have all these apartment buildings, and he's like way down in sort of like sub-basements. And so that's why then you see this just huge crater that was made, where he was hit. And that it's in what's very interesting too is people who really know the region, they know Arabic, what's coming up now is kind of fascinating, because some of them are starting to post things about like, okay, here's these people reacting, and these are not mild reactions. These are very, very serious, like people, like this has broken some people. This was a real, like, hero to the revolutionary concept. Now this is the next thing that hit me, was I was like, okay, what you're kind of seeing here is a bunch of these various, fundamentally these militias are being kind of systematically fucked up. So these quote-unquote non-state actor militias are now just kind of being obliterated in this whole new level of warfare that we've never seen anything like before, but we've kind of posited, if like you're familiar with the cyberpunk 2020 RPG, the whole thing is that there's a corporate warfare section, and so one of the things that you poison people with at a certain point is called like microdot poison, and that it's on some letter, and it's literally this dot of super potent poison, and it like kills everybody in an office, and in so doing, the idea is that it's corporate espionage and corporate sabotage, and so the thing that I started to think about was most of these militias at their kind of political pages, the history of what they've been about, they technically line up on the left as far as like their concept of like, so what's their goal? And their goal is usually some type of collectivist system that doles out quite specific benefits to the members of the collective. and it makes sense. I mean, that's the demands of the charity of their religion. That's the community. That's what you do. And so to this idea that you would try to kind of milk the system, which is what most people in the West are starting to detect now, seems to be key. Is no, these people think you're supposed to milk the people who are already here, or that's what we're here for, or something weird like that. So that conflict, that cultural conflict, and then you have the Americans that they think, they take Crass's do they owe us a living a little too serious. They need to snap out of it. No, nobody owes you shit. It's not a vote for making the labor pool smaller, and you'll become more valuable. That's it. Ruthlessly punish those who violate the shrinking of the labor pool. That's it. That make people fear cheating. That's it. And you'll have a more honest society, but that's not really what's going on with the left. They're it's this conflict that they themselves are in, because it's an ideology, not necessarily a set of fundamental principles or a way of working from first principles, which is the key to a proper kind of conservative or kind of rightist point of view. And the more the rightist strays into some kind of goofy ideology, the more they start to mimic the left in some way. Israel has mostly been wiping out Marxist-Leninists and various other type of Marxist, Salafist, and Wahhabist organizations. The other part of this is, I was waiting for it, France is pissed. I looked at something and I've got to find it again. France is all sorts of upset about this. And I've been waiting for that. France. I was like, okay, if this is what I think it is, France will get angry. And sure enough, they have. I've got to find the story again. I'm so glad I went through this. This is why you guys are great, because then I have to rethink a lot of things. Because it was something about Macron specifically, if I remember right, complaining about the methods of Israel or whatever Israel did. But key to this is that because people don't, outside of kind of the right, people don't remember. France and their endless revolution, kind of yay for revolution all the time, or something weird like that they kind of are about. Well, they were the ones who stashed away the Ayatollah. Persia was dope. Iran was a dope place. There's rock and roll, rare psychedelia from there. All kinds of fascinating stuff that was happening, and then bada boom, bada bing, the Ayatollah comes from France, and the lunatics come out of the woodwork. And so it's one of these things that I've actually had to sit back and be like, okay, if Israel's starting to wipe out leftists and leftist militias and Marxists of various sorts that have, one of the things that David Livingstone, because it takes a while, got to listen to him for a while and digest it, and then it's like, I get it. Now I get where you're coming from. And one time he just nailed it, because he was talking to a fellow Muslim. And so he was like, all of this modernist shit and jihadi shit and Marxist Islam shit, he goes, it's a reopening of the House of Islam, and that is forbidden. And this guy was like blown away. He was like, and so the ideologies and schools, where it's not actually ideology, schools of theology in Islam are restricted to 4, if I remember correctly. And by including things like Marxism, including various modernist ideas, that this suddenly, like, say, Pan-Arabism, things like the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan's stuff, all of this is forbidden in the kind of really orthodox way of being. But so what this means is, like, this is when the Muslim world was super normal looking, only in my youth. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, people looked totally normal. And now everyone's dressed like they're in Iran. So the thing that it was just interesting, because he goes, this is actually now made, many Muslims have this problem of, like, sort of forever being outside of the norms of society. They're like, yeah, because the theology of those 4 schools has sort of allowed for people to fall into place where they kind of naturally do. Once you introduce this ultra extreme kind of thinking that really it has its own problems with itself, it has its own problems with its own logic, internal logic, but once this is done, you really throw off the people who are just normal, moderate people who want a normal, moderate life. They now have to contend with Marxist, Leninist, wacky doodle-doo kind of stuff. That's being tagged on to the practices, or tagged on as like something that buttresses the theology or something. I mean, yeah. So anyway, the Israelis are putting a dent in non-state actor militias, and specifically Marxists, that, okay, this is going to be really hard for the left to figure out what to do in this way. The left would kind of like to be able to posit that you can do this to Americans who are in militias, because, you know, these dangerous right-wing militias, blah, 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 and they're dangerous, and people are unsafe, and there's men in dresses who are in terror because of right-wing militias in the United States who keep them unsafe at all times with the unsafety of anti-safetyism, and, you know, and all that business, you know, everything that makes, you know, whoa, think of the children, you know. And so they could end up being like, see, look at how, you know, Israel handled the problem of non-state actor militias. But no, they're not going to pull that off right. No. Okay, it has happened. There's been a bunch of, there's no way around it. There's been a gang of evictions. Something happened to the housing here in Oregon recently. And, like, it said, like, hella people have been evicted. And, like, there's things about, like, people's porches and other stuff that I'm like, okay, interesting. There's a lot of decorations that aren't around anymore. Other things, I'm like, yeah, I think a bunch of people got evicted. Huh, very interesting. Anyway. So, the other thing I was thinking about, or actually, no, this level of warfare, this level of intrigue, real incredible planning, it does start to show, like, you know, one, if you know that you know the Mossad's still around, they're still the Mossad, you know, but the key thing is, though, is non-state actors, and quite specifically these type of non-state actors being struck at, and they're the mascots of so many people in the West and kind of their leftist fantasies. I actually used to even I was around somebody who they had this absolute fascination with some Kurdish militia. And remember, it's Antifa who's trained with those Kurdish militias. And they went up and did the security and the CHOP and Chaz up there in Seattle, and might have been involved more than anybody really wants to talk about in something that happened there. So that's my theory. But what's occurred now that it's going to be interesting to see what will the elements of various left end of politics kind of people say. Because at some point they're going to have to bring up, like, yeah, well, these organizations, and then at some point it's going to be like, okay, so now you're defending these organizations. Oh no, but you see, so it's going to be kind of fascinating to see how people play this politically. Yeah. All right. Later.